गुड मॉर्निंग जनाब, एवरीबॉडी गुड मॉर्निंग। तो मैं इस वक्त अपने मौजूद हूँ स्लीपिंग सेल के अंदर। वो अलग बात है कि ये जेल का स्लीपिंग सेल नहीं है, ये जेल हॉस्टल का स्लीपिंग सेल है। आज मैं इस जेल का भी थोड़ा सा आपको इंट्रोडक्शन करवाऊंगा और ऑटोमा में बाहर भी निकलूंगा और देखूंगा कि और यहाँ पे और कौन कौन सी ऐसी चीज़ें जिनको एक्सप्लोर किया जा सकता है। और अब मैं निकल रहा हूँ बाहर। ब्रेकफास्ट इंक्लूडेड है। इसको किया बंद। बड़े भारी 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 भरकम किस्म के दरवाजे हैं। इस बंदे को जिस कमरे में मैं रहा हूँ इसको 1887 11 अप्रैल 1887 को इसको सज़ा हुई थी। जोसेफ मैकमोनस इसका नाम था। फाउंडिंग विद इंटेंट, यानी जानबूझ के इसने किसी को जख्मी किया था, उसको इस सेल में रखा गया था। तो ये तमाम इस तरह की मौजूद हैं। कई फ्लोर्स के ऊपर ये हॉस्टल मौजूद है। इस वक्त मैं जा रहा हूँ नाश्ते के लिए, जाके देखता हूँ नाश्ते में क्या क्या बना हुआ है। रिसेप्शन से पता चला कि 2 नंबर जो है वो है ये लेवल नंबर 2 के अंदर है किचन। ये है जी कैंटीन, दिखने में खौफसदार सुनसान लग रही है। तो मैं अपना सामान रखूँगा यहाँ। 1972 को आखिरी कैदी यहाँ से निकल चुका था। मुझे दिल में है भाई कि इसके अंदर है क्या। अल्लाह अकबर। नाज़रीन, इसके अंदर से तो मैंने सोचा पता नहीं क्या क्या सैंडविच वगैरह निकलेंगे और सामान निकलेगा। ये है जी यहाँ का ब्रेकफास्ट। समथिंग इज बेटर देन नथिंग बाय द वे। तो अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह ये भी बहुत है। तो अभी मैं निकल रहा हूँ किचन से, और किचन से निकल के मुझे अपने कमरे को शिफ्ट करना है। रात जिस कमरे में लेटा था वहाँ वाईफाई के सिग्नल कुछ कमज़ोर थे। किधरों खोला दरवाज़ा। मुझे सारा सामान एक दूसरे कमरे के अंदर शिफ्ट करना है। कमरा नहीं, एक्चुअली सेल। एक दूसरे सेल के अंदर शिफ्ट करना है। तो मैं क्विकली उस सामान की शिफ्टिंग कर लूँगा। ये होगा जनाब मेरा नया स्लीपिंग सेल। अपना सामान उठा के लाऊंगा। जी जनाब, तो इस वक्त हम मास्तुन के जो है ना सारे जेल के टूर पर जाने लगे हैं और अब हम जाएंगे। ये खातून है हमें जेल के टूर के लिए लेके जाएगी और ये वाली, और हम इसके पीछे पीछे जाएंगे। इस वक्त हम मौजूद हैं सबसे ऊपर।
It started as a prison hospital, but very similar to quarantine. Prisoners weren't given medicine, they weren't really treated by doctors, and therefore prisoners just got more sick and usually died. A lot of them died of gangrene, so essentially it just was not productive and they shut it down. Once they shut it down, they were supposed to have a prison doctor who was supposed to come in regularly. However, reports show that he didn't. But when they shut it down, they brought women up from the debtors' prison and gave them their own unit. We don't have the exact date, but it was in the early 1900s. Once that happened, women and their children would be in that area, as well as any children who themselves were convicted of crimes. So it's not like it is today, you could be convicted at a very young age. I don't even know if there was a limit, but the youngest kid here was only 7, so very young. He was here for minor theft. A lot of kids were here for things like theft and just like pulling pranks on people and just being that unruly daredevil type child. Things as small as that could get you sent to jail. There was actually somebody here with, I think it was a kid, but I'm not positive, here with epilepsy. So if you had epilepsy, they didn't understand it at the time, they thought you were a lunatic, and therefore you were sent to jail, unfortunately.
That's so ridiculous.
Yeah, for
Medical
sure.
technology behind the
Yeah.
individual is punished.
Yeah, for sure.
इस वक्त हम मौजूद हैं सबसे ऊपर 8वें फ्लोर के ऊपर, 8th फ्लोर द हाईएस्ट फ्लोर। और मेरा ख्याल है यहाँ सबसे खतरनाक कैदी रखे जाते थे गालिबन।
So this is the maximum security area. As I said, the higher we get, the higher the crime also gets. However, this is only a provincial institution, meaning prisoners being kept here were serving sentences of 2 years minus a day. Federal institutions were and still are for more severe crimes of 2 years plus a day. So therefore, on the grand scale of things, these weren't your worst crimes, with the exception of death row, but we'll talk about that later. So things up here would have been things like minor assault, theft, and arson, which is catching things on fire. Whereas the other floors were things like homelessness, which was very common for you to be sent here for homelessness. I think a large majority of prisoners were here for vagrancy, which is homelessness, prostitution, brothels, things like that. So very minor crimes on the lower floors throughout most of the jail, also mental illness. You were kept in your cells for 10 hours a night in the summer and 12 hours a night in the winter. When you weren't in your cells, you were outside doing yard work if you were a man. Women would be cleaning as well as knitting socks for most of the day. Those socks were then used for prisoner socks. If you were too old to work or unhealthy, you'd be chained to your cell door by your wrist. Or you'd be able to walk back and forth, but again, depending on the guards and what they wanted you to do. You weren't given much to do during the day. You weren't given books or cards or anything like that. So really nothing to pass your time. Inside each cell was a thin cot on the floor. So no bed frames. And a honey bucket in these cells. So solitary, you had to ask for it, whereas in these cells, it was in the cell with you. Up to 3 prisoners could be kept in each cell. This was due to potential overcrowding issues. So it's unclear how often this happened, but the max capacity per cell was 3. You would think it would be 1, but it's not. Because they didn't have glass on the windows, essentially you have snow and rain and just overall damp air coming in. And with the mattresses on the floor, they were damp and really, really, really moldy. So the inspectors in multiple reports were saying how badly that the jail needed to install bed frames, but it's unclear if or when it ever happened, but for the most of the time, they were on the floor and very poor. You'd be sleeping on wet, moldy mattresses.
Is a honey bucket, they do pee and food together?
Yeah.
And then if it is filled, they ask a guard to dispense it?
Yes, but I imagine it depends on if the guard wants to dispense it or not.
तो नाज़रीन यहाँ पे 3 बंदे रहते थे एक टाइम में या ज़्यादा, लेकिन कम से कम 3 लोग यहाँ पे बंद किए जाते थे और उनके लिए कोई मैट्रेस नहीं होता था। वो असॉल्ट या इस तरह के जुराइम के अंदर यहाँ पे होते थे और उनके लिए वॉशरूम जाने की फैसिलिटी भी नहीं होती थी। उनके लिए एक बास्केट रख दी जाती थी जिसके अंदर वो अपने बाथरूम जाने की तमाम ज़रूरियात को उस बास्केट के अंदर तीनों कैदी फुल करते थे।
So these were the temporary holding cells, which means that the prisoners who had been arrested but not yet convicted. So they hadn't had their day in trial yet. It's the same as what we know as remand today. So essentially they're still innocent, they have not yet been proven guilty. But despite this, they can be kept in there for up to 2 years due to administrative errors on behalf of guards and guards just neglecting to check their files and things like that. Up to 20 prisoners can be kept in these cells, again, due to overcrowding. You guys are welcome to go in. This one's been changed by the hospital, so if you go in, just note that that's not what it looked like, but the other ones are original.
20 people like each one?
Yeah, that was the max capacity. It's unknown how often that
तो जो मुजरिम साबित नहीं होते थे उनको यहाँ रखा जाता था और 20 लोग तक रखे जाते थे। और आप समझ सकते हैं कि फिर क्या हालात होते होंगे।
I'm actually not sure. I think that the door was broken and people got stuck in there. I guess. So they closed that one. You can go on the other one. Yeah, so that's for the law clerk. If you do that, then you can open it.
Okay, perfect.
So these are this is the death row. So essentially, the way that it works was when you're first sentenced to your execution, you start in this cell. As you get closer to your execution date, you move until you get to the third cell there. The reason for this was that the executions happened back here, but they wanted the one going to their execution to have to walk past these two people to instill kind of an extra sense of fear. It was a fear tactic, it wasn't anything practical, but it was just kind of freak these prisoners out. That is also partially why the floor is different. So it's wood here, whereas there's no wood flooring anywhere else. You can tell how squeaky it is. So two purposes. One being, if guards are constantly walking back and forth, it makes it difficult for prisoners to have peace of mind, to pray, to meditate, to sleep, whatever they need to do. And therefore it disturbs that, and that's done on purpose. But more practically, it was a security measure. If prisoners did get out, since these were the max security cells, they would hear them walking around. So there were 3 official executions here. The first one was Patrick James Whelan. He was convicted of killing parliamentarian and the father of Confederation, Thomas D'Arcy McGee. So because he was the father of Confederation, he was very well known and very well liked, and therefore people were really upset and really wanted someone to be found guilty. There was not a lot of evidence against Patrick, but basically he was at the scene of the crime or in the neighborhood with a pistol in his pocket. However, it was common to have a pistol in your pocket in the 1800s in Ottawa. He also was Irish. So at the time, there was a lot of Irish immigrants in Canada and specifically in Ottawa. Among these Irish immigrants, there was a group called the Fenians who were trying to gain independence from Britain. So therefore, they were known as a more radicalized group, I guess you could call it. And the government didn't like them. They were against a lot of the things the government was doing. Therefore, they believed it was a Fenian who killed Patrick. Killed Thomas. Because Patrick was Irish, they just made the assumption that he was a Fenian and therefore he was guilty. He denied it and there was no known affiliations. However, that was a big piece of evidence that they used. So because they thought he was a Fenian, they actually built that 4th cell there that we all walked through that's enclosed in the steel there. There were 2 steel doors on either side at the time. The reason for this is they were worried that the Fenians would create an explosion outside or something to try to get him out. There were never any attempts made, but that was why they did it. So when he was executed on February 11th of 1869, they had public executions. Therefore, 5,000 people came out to watch. 5,000 people would have been almost all of Ottawa's population in the 1860s, but that's just how high profile it was. However, this was the last public execution to happen here because they hadn't figured out the rope length body weight ratio needed for a proper snap of the neck, and instead it resulted in a 4-minute strangulation in front of 5,000 people. They ended up actually abolishing public executions after this. The next one was George Seabrook. We don't have as much information, it wasn't as high profile, but he was convicted of killing a gas station attendant. This was in 1933, so quite a bit later. Again, based on very circumstantial evidence, they didn't have a lot against him. The last one, again more high profile, Eugene Lormont was convicted of killing a detective named Thomas Stoneman. That was Ottawa's first police murder, and therefore it was more high profile. So again, circumstantial evidence, and Eugene was actually intoxicated at the time of the offense, as well as when he was interrogated by police. So he likely said things he would not have said had he been sober when he was interrogated. But nonetheless, he was executed in 1946, and that was the last official execution. Okay, any questions before we move on?
Is that the death cell? Okay.
Okay, so yeah, as you can see, this is the gallows, which is where individuals were executed. But first, I want to point your attention to the beam here before we go down there. So, although I said there were 3 official executions, there were actually many more. They were unofficial executions that happened illegally, where guards actually murdered prisoners from this beam. They weren't sentenced to execution, they were not supposed to be executed, the guards just took it upon themselves and it was murder. They were not, this wasn't allowed, they weren't doing it, it was terrible treatment. You can actually see the notch marks at the top in the middle where the rope chafed. You can see it at the top of the beam. Sometimes you can see it better from down here, so you can look again when we go. This beam offers no architectural stability to the building. We've had architects who come in and said that, and you can also see that it's been added on after the fact. These suicide bars were not here at the time. This is because this back stairwell was only accessible by guards, and prisoners were not transported down here. Whereas in the front stairwell, they would have been bringing prisoners. So therefore, they didn't even have these. The hostel added them. So it was believed that after they hung the individual, they dropped their body to the bottom. This is just my speculation before I say it, but you can actually see if you look down right now, that the floor right under here, just right under here, in a perfect rectangle shape, has been replaced because it was so badly damaged. My assumption is that it's because of that. Whether I'm right or not, I can't tell you, but we can come down now as you guys are in. You can see the doors at the very back of the gallows. They kind of look like wooden barn doors. Yeah, the last picture. We don't know how long these went on, but yeah, the last picture.
Sorry. Thank you.
So feel free to take a look and then we'll meet downstairs when you're ready.
ये इनका डेथ सेल था और नीचे इधर से हैंग किया जाता था लोगों को। वो बड़े बड़े दरवाजे हैं जिसको खोल दिया जाता था ओकेजनली मौक़ों के ऊपर, कई फांसियों के ऊपर उनको खोल दिया जाता था ताकि लोग उनको देख सकें, और यहाँ से लोगों को फांसी दी जाती थी। इस पिलर के ऊपर, ये जो आप ऊपर पिलर देख सकते हैं, इस पिलर के ऊपर से लोगों को गार्ड जो है इलीगली बांध कर फिर नीचे धक्का दे देते थे और वो नीचे गिरते थे। वहाँ पे जाके यहाँ पे लोग गिरते थे जाके। ये जो लकड़ी का आपको नज़र आ रहा है प्लीज़। Sorry.
So you can see the doors that I pointed out when we were upstairs that would have opened up and allowed for public executions. As you can see, this area here is pretty small. So this would have been for higher class members of society, those who were actually invited to watch, like parliamentarians, guards, things like that. Everybody else would have watched from the hill over there because they didn't have all these buildings at the time. This area was the courtyard where prisoners were sentenced to work, and it's also believed they worked out in what is now the parking lot as well, and they helped with building this courtyard wall here. The jail was closed in 1972, so 110 years after it opened. It was said to be too inhumane to continue operating, the same reason that the courthouse next door closed down. And so again, they built another jail that was bigger and was supposed to be more humane. It still exists in Ottawa today. 6 months after it closed as a jail, it opened up as a hostel, and they brought prisoners back from the new jail to help turn it into the hostel it is today. So that's the end of the tour. If you guys have questions, feel free to ask me now or come up to me after.
यहाँ पे ही इस टूर का इख्तिताम होता है ऑफिशियली। यहाँ पे मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंटेरियंस और दूसरे तीसरे जितने भी लोग होते थे, गार्ड्स वगैरह या हाई प्रोफाइल पीपल, वो जब ऊपर से वो दरवाज़ा खुलता था वो वाला, ये दरवाज़ा ये दरवाज़ा जब खुलता था तो फिर जो मैंने अंदर से भी दिखाया वो लोग देख लिया करते थे कि फांसी कैसे होती है और बाकी लोग बाहर से देखते थे। जी तो नाज़रीन, ये था हमारा आज का जेल का टूर। इस वक्त तो कनाडा में ऑफ कोर्स मैं एज़ पर माई नॉलेज सज़ाए मौत के ऊपर पाबंदी है, ह्यूमन राइट्स के इश्यूज एंड स्टफ हैं। लेकिन ऑफ कोर्स अब मैं यहाँ से इस दरवाज़े से बाहर निकल रहा हूँ। 2-2 साल तक लोगों को कोई भी बग़ैर किसी यानी कि कंफर्मेशन के सज़ा दे दी जाती थी और बग़ैर किसी सबूत के उनको 2-2 साल तक 20-20 लोगों को एक कमरे में रहना पड़ता था। तो ऑफ कोर्स इट्स नॉट अ आइडियल सिचुएशन। तो शुक्र अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह कि पैदा हुए हैं 20वीं सदी में, 21वीं सदी में जाके, और अल्लाह का शुक्र है कि तुक्का लग के कनाडा भी पहुंच गए हैं। तो ऐसे ही है जी। तो नाजरीन, ये था हमारा आज का जेल का विज़िट। अपना दोस्तों और रिश्तेदारों का सबका ख्याल रखिएगा। इस चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कीजिए, इसके ऊपर कमेंट्स कीजिए, लाइक कीजिए, क्योंकि इस वक्त इस चैनल को आप सबकी बहुत ज़रूरत है।